Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Equine Essentials. I'm your host, Gray Parks, nutritionist for ProTrition Feed, and I'm here tonight to talk to you about the do's and don'ts of ration balancers. So how these products are designed to be used, some common mistakes or bad advice people give about using ration balancers, and how to maximize using a ration balancer to improve your horse's nutrition and your bottom line when it comes to your feed budget. The first question you may have is, what is a ration balancer? A ration balancer is essentially a highly concentrated feed product, which means that it has a low feeding rate. So a ration balancer, depending on the brand and the type of horse that we're looking at, is going to be designed to be fed at a rate of 1 to 2, maybe occasionally 3 pounds per horse per day. Unlike a traditional feed where the minimum feeding rate for an average size horse is usually in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 pounds per horse per day. This means that with a ration balancer, we can provide high quality protein, a balanced amino acid profile, and concentrated vitamins and minerals so that for a horse that maintains its weight well on a forage only diet, we can make sure we're balancing the rest of that horse's nutrition without providing excess calories. These products are also generally low in sugars and starches, making them ideal for easy keeping horses prone to metabolic disorders. In our ProTrition family of products, we carry a total of 5 different ration balancer products. So whatever your preference or needs, we have a ration balancer that can fit what your horse needs for its particular diet. Tonight, we're going to talk about primarily our Pinnacle Balancer product, but all of this information can easily be extrapolated onto other ration balancers in our ProTrition Feed family. So the basic do of a ration balancer is use them to provide the required nutrition for your easy keepers. As I said, those easy keeping horses might maintain a good or even heavy body weight on only hay or pasture, but no hay or pasture, no matter how high quality, is going to contain the perfect balance of amino acids, vitamins, and minerals for that horse's needs. So for these horses, we can take a feeding rate that's very low with minimal calories and meet those needs. So the horse in this photograph, for example, as you can see, is wearing a grazing muzzle. She's very, very round, even with that grazing muzzle on. If I wanted to meet her basic vitamin and mineral needs using a typical regular horse feed, a concentrate that you're used to buying with a minimum feeding rate of 4 pounds, then that would be giving her over 5,000 additional calories per day. But that same pony can get her basic needs met with 1.5 pounds of a ration balancer. In the case of Pinnacle Balancer, that would give her 1,650 calories. So significantly fewer calories for the same nutrition. And that's really the market that a ration balancer is designed for, right? Those horses that don't need a lot of calories but do need nutrition. However, we'll talk about tonight some other ways we can use a ration balancer that also makes a lot of sense from a nutritional and an economic standpoint. A don't that we want to do with a ration balancer is feed this product as if it were a regular concentrate feed. If you pull the feed tag off of a balancer product and compare that to a typical performance or broodmare or senior horse diet, you will notice that the nutrient concentrations are 2 to 4 times higher in the ration balancer than they are in a regular feed. So for example, Pinnacle Balancer contains selenium at 2 parts per million. That's 2 milligrams for every 2 pounds of balancer that you feed. But if you look at a regular feed, you'll see selenium at only 0.5 to 0.9 parts per million. So again, a factor of 4 higher in the ration balancer than in the feed. Same thing with vitamin A, for example. Pinnacle Balancer contains 25,000 international units of vitamin A per pound versus our regular feed lines that, depending upon which product we're looking at, contain somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 10,000 international units per pound. And that reflects how those products are designed to be used. This applies to all of the vitamins and minerals in those particular products, but I've drawn your attention to selenium and vitamin A in particular because those are nutrients where if we were to try to feed a balancer like a regular feed, then we could end up potentially with excesses or even toxicities if we feed too much. So for example, if you are feeding 5 or 6 pounds of a regular feed, you would not want to replace that with 5 or 6 pounds of balancer. Across our family, we generally don't recommend our balancer products, with one exception being the Purina Omega Match, which has a slightly different profile, being fed at more than 3 pounds per head per day. If the horse needs more calories than that, then there are better ways to address that. Aside from the horse's nutrient needs and potential excesses, we also want to be concerned about environmental implications of feeding excessive amounts. Maybe you're not worried about toxicity and think, well, a little extra phosphorus, a little extra copper, a little extra zinc isn't a big deal. And it may not be to the horse, but it could very well be to the horse's environment. So we don't want to spend the money or the environmental impact of feeding excessive amounts of nutrients when they're not needed, and there are more economical, more balanced options available for those harder keeping horses. Another way ration balancers can be used that's slightly less well known is as a way to fortify or supplement horses who do need some calories from a regular feed, but can't quite take the full recommended amount of that feed. So another example from my herd at home here, this mare is what I call an easy-ish keeper. She's a little harder to keep weight on than a true ration balancer candidate, but too easy of a keeper to feed the full recommended amount of most of our regular concentrates. So currently she's open, she's a brood mare, so essentially a horse at maintenance, and minimally she would need 1 pound of Pinnacle Balancer to the tune of 1,100 calories to meet her nutrient needs. But if I fed her only that and all the hay or pasture she could eat, she would lose weight. If I decide to change her to one of our other feeds, for example, the Pinnacle 1200 high fat, she would need minimally 3 pounds, which is 3,900 calories roughly. And when I do that, then she gains a little bit more weight than I'm comfortable with her carrying. So her solution, and the solution for a lot of horses out there, is half and half. Half the recommended rate of balancer and half the recommended rate of the 1200 high fat. That gets her to around 2,500 calories, so right in between those two, but I know that I'm covering her nutrient needs at that amount, and as you can see in the photo, it keeps her in perfect body condition. So don't be afraid to think outside the box with your ration balancer use, but make sure if you are adding them onto a regular commercial feed that you're reducing one or both products to make sure that you're not overloading any particular nutrient. Another really common misconception that some other internet sources and even a couple of other feed companies will sometimes recommend is using a balancer product as a weight gain supplement. That is the exact opposite of how these products are designed to be used. And yes, they do contain calories, but as we've already discussed, they also contain other nutrients that if you just added 2 pounds of a balancer on top of 8 or 10 pounds of another feed, you could potentially run into toxicity issues. The other issue is that with hard-keeping horses, where every single bite of feed needs to count, and we want the most energy-dense diet possible, then balancers aren't really an efficient way to do that. At 1,100 calories per pound, they're not a great energy or calorie supplement. And their calorie sources, like high protein, for example, are not metabolically efficient. So yes, a body can use protein for calories, but that costs energy for the body to do, and it's not as efficient at putting weight on as adding, for example, fat, where we can get a really low volume, high calorie feed product. So I've thrown just some examples out here. For a horse that's on a regular feed and not gaining enough weight, instead of adding balancer, a better option would be to move to a higher calorie concentrate like our Pinnacle 1200 high fat or Purina Ultium or Triple Crown Perform Gold, something extremely high calorie. Or if you don't want to change the horse's total diet and just want to add some calories, then a dedicated fat source like Pinnacle Energy Plus or Purina Amplify is a better way to add just a balanced fat source without potentially adding too many minerals and vitamins into that horse's diet. It's also more cost effective because you're going to get roughly double the calories per pound. So even though the product costs a little more, you spend less per day if you use a true fat supplement instead of a balancer for adding weight to a hard-keeping horse. Most importantly, when you use a balancer, you want to make sure you're using the correct feeding rate. So for Pinnacle Balancer, assuming you have an average sized horse, so a horse that at its mature ideal body weight is somewhere between 900 and 1,200 pounds, then generally, if a horse is doing nothing, you will feed between 1 and 1.5 pounds of Balancer per day. For a horse in light to moderate exercise, you could bump that up to 1.5 to 2 pounds. And then pregnant mares, depending upon where they are in gestation, anywhere between 1 and 2.5 pounds. Some weanlings and yearlings are very easy keepers and may not be able to eat our mare and foal feed. In that case, you can feed weanlings at a rate of 2 to 2.5 pounds per day, or yearlings at 1.5 to 2 pounds per day of our Balancer product. You'll notice I don't have horses in heavy exercise or lactating mares on this particular slide. While some of those horses are easy keepers, it's very rare that that class of horse would be so fat that a Balancer is the best option. But if you have one of those horses, feel free to reach out to me or one of your ProTrition sales staff and we can help you calculate the amount of Balancer that particular horse needs to balance their diet. Thank you for joining me for tonight's episode of Equine Essentials. I hope to see you again next month.